Hi, and welcome to another episode of the North American Association of Cerebral Palsy Advocates Chatline. My name is Caleb Wells. I am the founder and chairman of the North American Association of Cerebral Palsy Advocates. Again, I am joined by my partner in crime, my vice president, Tanner Lynn. How are you today, Tanner?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Uh,
That's just that's just
I,
all.
I mean, I've had better nights than last night, but it's okay. We'll get through that. That's not what the show is about. We're
No.
actually jumping on here today to kind of talk about because our upbringing because last week I mentioned that we kind of grew up in the shadows of each other living a very similar life and never knew that. So I think we'll just start with that. So we're both Midwest kids from the bi-state area of Missouri and Illinois. I know we've mentioned that in the past. But what you probably don't know about us is that we're both twins. And I don't know. I guess I'll throw this to you first. What it was like growing up with a twin brother who's not disabled. So
Oh
I'll
well.
I'll go with you first.
Okay. Well, growing up with a twin brother, um, in it in and of itself is very interesting. And then to top it all off, my twin brother doesn't have CP, and so it's like, okay, yeah, we're one and the same, but we're not the same because if you knew my twin brother, and he's probably listening to this freaking podcast right now because that's what he does now.
Does he
Um,
actually listen?
he actually listens. So hi, um, as you're listening to this, hi. But it it was weird for for me being the only disabled person in the house. Really the only disabled person in the school, but I would say growing up with a twin is like growing up in the same in the same area without being in the same area at times because like me and my twin sometimes we talk the same, but we're not even like we don't even have the same interests at all. Like we're not, and we don't look the same, so we're not fraternal. We're not like
You're not identical, you're fraternal.
no, yeah, we're not identical. I'm sorry, but um, yeah, it was just a whole different experience.
So
Um,
that's interesting that you bring that up because I was going to say I grew up with a twin brother and we are also fraternal. We grew up in like the same house, but it was really just kind of like growing up with a brother. Yes, we were the same age. We're a minute and 2 seconds apart or something like that. I don't know the exact number, but uh, it it made me wonder like those things because a lot of my friends with cerebral palsy have twins that are not disabled. So, and I don't have a stat on this. We should have probably done more research before we came on about this. But um, yeah, my brother and I are two completely different people.
exactly. I mean, that's how I am too.
It it's interesting, and your twin does not live in the same city that you do anymore.
No,
I I of course moved away and was away from my twin for about 7 years. So I I find it interesting even in my own house because my older brothers are also twins, and they are identical. And when we were growing up, they were pretty much inseparable. They
Yeah.
did everything together. My twin and I didn't even like being in the same room.
Uh,
So, so I think as we've gotten older and now that we're adults, we kind of have a mutual respect for each other. But for a while, we didn't even want to be around each other. We lived completely different lives, kind
yeah.
of in the same orbit, I guess is the term that I would use
True.
with
Well, like
that.
for me, my twin brother was my has been my basically my caregiver up until he decided to move across the country. But that for me is something different because he it he if I have some medical procedure done, he instantly feels bad for me and is like, oh no, Tanner's hurt or Tanner's having procedure, so I must feel that way too. And it's for him. I think it's a bonding thing. Like him and I feel that feel that connection somehow. But um,
So, so with you guys, I know it was kind of this big topic of conversation for my family is my brother had survivor's guilt growing up. Uh, and growing up, that's hard. It's like, because again, I don't know if we've talked about it on this podcast, but everybody has those why me questions. Those questions become heightened when you're disabled. You're wondering, like, why was I put in this situation? Why did God deal the cards that he dealt to me, or whoever your creator is, why they dealt the cards I was dealt. And it was really difficult for my brother. He dealt with a lot of mental health things stemming from that. And that made me feel bad.
yep,
I don't think it was necessarily anybody's fault why I was in this situation. And it wasn't until we were like 19, 20 years old and I came back on a holiday break from college and we sat down and just kind of talked about it. And it was the first time in our lives in 19 years that we actually sat down and talked about those things. And it really helped kind of give closure to me and to him as well, where uh, we we talked about kind of all the opportunities that I was afforded because I was disabled, things that I would have done that I never would have even dreamed of if I wasn't. So, and it's not to say like my disability is my entire personality,
no,
but because I'm disabled, it has shaped what I do for a living. It has shaped how I live my life. And I think it really took him hearing me say, I don't feel bad about this. This is how I live and this is how I'm going to survive. For him really to kind of let those things go. And now he's on a rocket to the moon, which is amazing and doing things that I could never even imagined him doing. So
yeah. I
I'm
mean,
really proud of him for that. But it took us having that conversation to come to this mutual understanding of, yeah, you should not feel bad about this because I'm going to get through it. So
that's what I always try to tell Tucker is that don't feel bad because it's just how it's how I was brought up and how I'm supposed to live my life. So it's nothing that anybody can control. So just make the best of it.
I I know that I say this a lot, and I'm sure you're tired of me saying this, but one of my favorite saying is load the wagon and don't worry about the mules and control what you can control. That's basically what that breaks down to, right? You're going to be
Yes.
able to load the wagon. You're not going to worry about the things in front of you. You just have to be able to control what you can control. And it really brings a perspective into life that at the end of the day, there are things out of your control. And it's that radical acceptance that, yes, the sky is blue. I'm disabled. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to make the most of what I.
Exactly. That's how I live.
So, on top of that, not only are we twins, not only do we both have spastic quadriplegia, but we have the same doctor. And the ironic thing about this is this doctor is not even in Missouri or Illinois. So
Nope.
he can go ahead and kind of talk about that for a little bit
So
because you're more passionate about that than I am.
So we found out that we went to the same doctor just by having a conversation about where I was going for a medical trip one time. And Caleb goes, wait, what did you just say? And I think your exact words were no, no, no.
No, my exact words. Well, the words after that, I don't think we can say on this podcast without
No,
having
we
an
can't.
expletive flag. So in in the um, in the interest of cleaning this up and not putting that little E flag next to our name on Spotify, I think I was floored because we had never met in person.
Nope.
First of all, I don't even think at this point I knew where you lived.
Yeah.
I think you just said that you went to Gillette and you saw Dr. Tom Novacek. Shout out to Tom. I'm sure that he'll never hear this in his life. But I think we send it to Novacek just as a joke. But it was just one of those weird serendipitous moments where it's like, okay, this guy is interesting because I live in one of the best medical communities for people with cerebral palsy in the country, according to U.S. News and World Report. But although I argue, and I was kind of joking with my dad last night about this, you kind of pay to get on those U.S. News and World Report list.
Yep.
So it was interesting to find somebody else that had gone to this doctor that had those experiences that I had without even knowing you. And now that I know who you are and we're friends and we do this podcast, we do stuff outside of this podcast too. It's this weird serendipitous moment that you never could have expected.
And you're like, oh no. Like you and I have talked about this, like we're pretty sure that we've seen each other somewhere along the appointment line because there's no way possible. We probably didn't see each other, so
I mean, it's not that big of a hospital either. I mean, it's a big hospital, but I don't think
yeah,
that
it's
there's
not.
any way that we weren't in the hospital together at one point.
Yeah, at one point in our lives, most likely. But um, on that note, it is time to take a break and thank our sponsor,
Yes,
Giraffe.
our great sponsor, the great people over at Giraffe Bottle. Uh, they are sponsoring our podcast, and the Giraffe Bottle hands-free drinking systems allows users with various abilities to stay hydrated. The Giraffe Bottle assisted hydration technology is designed to be flexible and easy to use, with accessories available to mount wherever needed. Giraffe Bottle drinking solutions are great for wheelchairs, desks, beds, tables, and more. It is great for hands-free hydration on the go. With this special offer, you'll get $6 overnight shipping on orders over $35 within the continental United States at giraffebottle.com. That's giraffe, like the animal, bottle.com when you use the promo code ZIP at checkout. That's ZIP at checkout at giraffebottle.com for $6 overnight shipping on orders over $35. And all orders over $100 at Giraffe Bottle are free shipping within 3 days. So again, thank you to the great people at Giraffe Bottle for sponsoring the chat line. And we love the people at Giraffe Bottle. We're so excited about being able to work with them. So go and help them out. That's giraffe, like the animal, bottle.com for 30 for orders over $35, $6 overnight shipping, and then free shipping over $100. And thank you to Giraffe Bottle. They're great. They're an Illinois company. They're in our backyard, so we really appreciate them.
Yes. And back to the conversation
Yeah.
we go.
Yes.
So Caleb, like, what was it for you? Like, I know you said your twin brother does other stuff than you do, but like, do you have any of the same interests at all?
So that's actually funny because it wasn't really until my brother wasn't a big sports guy, and I was always the sports guy. I was always interested in sports stats and all sorts of things when I was younger. I know we've talked about this off air that when I was little, I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. And that's kind of what got me into podcasting by accident. But it wasn't until about 2 years ago that my brother got interested in hockey. And I had no idea that he got interested in a sport whatsoever. And then I move home and he just starts talking about hockey and he starts throwing all these stats at me and all this stuff. And I'm like, wait, you're interested in sports? He's like, yeah, I just really like hockey. Which I never really thought that he would be like a sports guy, but now he's starting to get interested in baseball and like the numbers part of sports that I was interested in. That was the only way that they could get me to learn math was through sports statistics. So it's been really cool being able to connect with him over that kind of stuff. But what has it been like for you, Tanner?
Well, I know that like Tucker and I we have like some of the same interests, but he's on completely different he's on a completely different educational level. Like I'm he's in the biomedical field and I'm in the computer field, so it's like he's way too sciencey for me. But like but I don't have the same interest as he does, but we still find ways to carry on conversations regardless of whether he's smarter than me or not. Um, I'm a minute older than him, and I remind him of that all the time.
See,
So
I hold it over my brother that I'm going to live longer than he is because
yeah,
he's a minute older than me. So I always kind of throw that back at Seth, like, I'm going to live longer than you are. He's like, only by a minute. I'm like, okay, that's fair. That's fair, but it's
yeah.
still.
But I mean, it's interesting that we don't have the same interests, but we still are we're still our twin brothers and have that bonding.
You have the
Bonding.
telepathy thing?
Yes, sort of.
Wow, you're like the first set of fraternal twins that I've actually known that have the telepathy thing.
Yep.
Like, yeah, I don't think Seth and I really ever developed that for
Yeah,
whatever reason, but
we do sometimes. It's interesting. Um, but I think as we've got older, we have learned to not be as close because, well, he doesn't live here, and so we still talk often, but it's like we have our own lives now, and so we we aren't as frequent communicators as we would be if he was here. I
Seth,
always
go ahead.
I
Okay.
always tell him you will come home, and he's like, I'm busy.
So Seth and I kind of come to this mutual understanding that we don't need to talk all the time. Just because of how it is. Like, I don't think that outside of the other day when he texted me for my ESPN Plus login, I don't think we really text. Um, he, it's weird. He doesn't have my phone number, so all of our messaging takes place on Facebook Messenger, which is odd. But like it, it's just weird things like that. Um, I, like I said, I do have other siblings, so and you have other siblings, and are you closer to your other siblings than you are because they live in town, right?
Yeah, I would say I'm closer just because of the distance, but um, yeah, we're we're all a pretty close family, but it makes it easier when they're closer.
And it also is different now that we're adults and
Yes.
we have families, or not necessarily families in our case, but like he has a girlfriend and a long-term girlfriend. With my ex. And that was one thing with my ex. My ex never really quite understood why we never really talked. She's like, "You're twins. Don't you have like the finishing each other's sentences thing?" I'm like, "No, it's just not how we roll."
Yeah.
Uh, in in that case, though, I'm glad that he kind of has his own life and our lives are not symbiotic in a way that we need each other to survive, because I don't know how that would necessarily look. I think it would stress me out, to be honest. But it since there's been changes in our family over the last 3 years, we have gotten closer than we were when we were younger, because you kind of learn that you do need each other, but not necessarily need each other the way you needed each other when you were younger.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's just a mutually exclusive thing to twins. I think that's just any sibling, any family. Uh, Growing up in a big Italian American household, I don't know if I could live any other way, right? Where you have to have your family. Like when I was with my ex, it was like, oh yeah, we see each other, but it's not like we see each other.
Often.
Yeah. Where with us, it's every Sunday, all of us get together. Me, my brothers, my dad, and my aunt and uncle, and my nephews, we all get together and have dinner together because we're all in the same town now. And
Yep.
that's something that we needed. But I guess you learn those things as you get older,
You
and
do.
it comes with perspective. Uh, Now we can kind of transition, since we're on the topic of childhood and family. What early schooling was like for you, going to a smaller school, like in a smaller area, and then I can
Um,
kind of share my experience.
schooling was actually kind of interesting because I was the only person with a disability in my school at the time. So I basically had to, between me and my family, we had to teach the school in a way, teach the school how to deal with somebody with a disability and teach them that yes, there are IEPs, but that means individual educate individualized education plan. So so that means that I needed to be taught this way, and they were like, "Oh well, we don't do it that way." Well, for me, or well, you will because that's how I learn, or whatever. So it was it was real interesting.
So we, I think we've talked about this on the podcast, and my background is in education, so I don't want to go too long because I could go 2.5 hours
Yeah,
on this topic just in of itself.
I won't let
So,
you.
so we're gonna make sure that we're on time and on target with this. But my mom, before we were born, my mom worked in special education. So it just was kind of a natural fit where she was going to be able to advocate for me to get the things I needed to succeed. And then eventually she was able to teach me those skills as I got older to be able to voice my opinion. Because at the end of the day, it's our life, right? We can't let other people just handle us for the rest of our lives, because those people are not always going to be around. So if you just have handlers and people advocating for you without being able to put your own voice in it, you're eventually, although you might be successful early on, if you don't find that voice or find a way to express what you need, eventually you're going to struggle. Uh, and that leads into another topic for another podcast conversation, but it's worth mentioning here that most of the time, adults with cerebral palsy, it's about a 56%, 56% is about the number of people with cerebral palsy where both of their parents have passed away and they're living in an assisted living home because it wasn't set up for them necessarily to succeed to live independently. Some of those things are environmental factors. Some of those things are physical factors. But it also comes back to that socialization and how you're raised. Again, we talk about that parenting toolbox. We're going to bring it back up here, Tanner. That parenting toolbox where we come through and talk about being able to not only give your kids a path to success, but you're also going to give them the tools and teach them the tools to have a path that they can forge on their own to success and what that looks like when eventually you're out of the picture. Because at the end of the day, the goal of a parent is to be able to raise happy, healthy, independent kids. And that's no different if a kid is disabled or something like that. And I know that there are extenuating factors in terms of severity of disability and things like that. But at the end of the day, there's no excuse just to put someone in bubble wrap and say, I will protect you always, because you're not always going to be there.
Yep.
So there's a song titled Waving Goodbye by Bug Hunter, and it's just kind of an ode to his parents when he wrote it. It was the best thing that a parent can do for their child is give them the tools and the ability to wave goodbye at the end of the day. And that really rings true in a lot of situations. And there are some really successful people with disabilities, cerebral palsy included, that have succeeded in spite of this societal pressure and the societal norm for us to play a sick role in culture. In sociology, we call it the sick role, where we are perceived by society through diagnosis and understanding that we are critically and chronically ill. There's a movement inside the independent living movement to completely debunk that theory. It's still going to persist.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, we want to be able to have the tools to move past that, move past the societal norm of being just put on disability, being put on SSI, and living off the government. And
Yeah.
it all starts in education, and it all starts with being able to, and school's not for everybody. We're not saying that, but educators, by the sheer nature of what we do in our profession, we are agents of socialization. We are with students 7 to 8 hours a day. The other times, the other 16 hours of the day, you're with your family and your friends and whatever. But in those 8 hours, we have a responsibility to help mold and guide young people. And it doesn't just stop with our able-bodied students. It also extends to our disabled population, where we should have this never say die, never give up attitude.
Yeah.
And being able to adapt. So being able to teach those soft skills, those people skills, those advocacy skills are super important. And there should be an onus on understanding that, again, something that we've talked about in the past on this show, cerebral palsy and disability is not necessarily a death sentence.
Yeah.
So,
on that note, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up this episode. But Caleb, thank you for thank you for letting me take over this episode today and talk about being a twin, because I know that you and I both have that experience in life, and that's kind of how you and I have bonded so well. I know that's a term that everybody uses, but that's basically it.
no, thank you for bringing this topic to the table, because we never really talked about it, and I'm really glad that you're able to kind of take the show over and
Yep.
run the show in of itself. But
And
this is the part of the show where I get to come here and say, remember to ring that notification bell if you're on YouTube. Subscribe.
And today, this last week, this podcast is now officially on all major podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon Music, all that. So if you would go to those platforms that you're on and subscribe and leave a review and support our sponsor, we would greatly appreciate that. And we will see you in the next episode.
Okay, but that's perfect. Remember, there is a back catalog if you're on YouTube, the back catalog on Spotify. You can listen to all of our episodes. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can do that through our comment section on YouTube. We check those, as well as through our email, which is naacpachair, CHIAR, @gmail.com. So that's naacpachair@gmail.com. That's all lowercase. And so if you reach out there, we'll put that in the podcast notes as well. And we will definitely see you in the next one. Thank you for joining us, however you're joining us, wherever you are joining us. Thank you for making us part of your day. And we'll see you in the next one.